This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and before I get started today, I want to make sure I remind you guys, as always, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure I was on top of when we drop our latest stuff. If you could please as well give us a 5-star rating, or a snap review, it'd be very, very appreciated. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, what have you. We can talk, we can chat, we can discuss, we can debate. And it seems like the popular topic to discuss, or not really debate, but to discuss around the world right now is the coronavirus. And obviously this is not a medical podcast. I'm not going to get into exactly like how it's spreading and like what we can do to help mitigate it and stuff like that. Other than, obviously people wash their hands. Instead, try to avoid large groups at this point in time because doesn't seem like it's slowing down, nor does it seem like we have the resources necessary to combat a rapid rise in virus cases. But due to that, things are happening in the sports world that directly caused by the coronavirus. So, not firstly, but just some of the things that have already happened. The NBA, well, not even just the NBA. Let me take that back. This is from ESPN. The NBA, NHL, MLB, and MLS are closing access to locker rooms and clubhouses to all non-essential personnel in response to the coronavirus crisis. The league announced in a joint statement Monday night. The leagues said they made the decision after consultation with infectious disease and public health experts. The NBA, in a call with teams earlier Monday, stressed that the move is not to ban reporters, but to ensure the safety of players and staff in those areas, which makes sense. And, obviously, given the issues and obviously the close quarters of like the post and pre-game settings, it made sense for all team locker rooms and clubhouses will be open only to players and essential employees of teams and team facilities until further notice. Media and access will be maintained in designated locations outside of the locker room and clubhouse setting. And obviously the changes, which the league says are temporary, will begin Tuesday, though some NHL teams will begin closing their locker rooms over the weekend, with player availability at practice and after games held outside the room or, in many cases, at news conference podiums. The NBA said that interviews with players will continue in settings other than the locker room, stressing a gap of 6 to 8 feet between reporters and their subjects. Now, this is interesting. These were interesting steps for the leagues to take, and I commend them for taking them. Obviously, I am always appreciative of people that are proactive as opposed to reactive. But yeah, this is interesting, and for a lot of people, this just makes sense. Just in terms of ease the minds of people. Just because obviously there's a lot of hysteria around this virus right now. No one really knows how bad it's going to get or how bad it could get, or even, people, there's still debate on how it's actually even spread, depending on who you go and who you get your information from. So just in that case, it's just, alright, what can the league do to help keep its players safe? Because that's obviously the most important part. Obviously without them, there are no games. There's nothing to come and see. There's nothing to watch, which we will get to in a second. But yeah, it's just this is obviously a hot topic of discussion, and rightfully so. There has to be something done, and so the leagues decided to take a stand and have people Just make sure that you try to avoid as many cases as you can. And obviously, most of the people that are affected by this mainly, in terms of like, well, I guess what is it? I guess I don't know. Fatality is like a Mortal Kombat video game award, but in terms of like people that get a fatal that where the disease becomes fatal for them, they're usually just like young kids or like the medically compromised or like older. So it's obviously it wouldn't go towards healthy players per se, but at the same time, a lot of these guys have kids, they have family, they have friends that may not be in as great a shape or in as good of a situation as they are. So if they could catch it and be fine, but then they could have a little child that catches it and maybe they're not as good, or like they're in close contact with a relative or something that could end up not in a good situation. So again, I commend the leagues for stepping in and doing this, just because you don't want to have any of these cases. That any of these cases affects people in any way, shape, or form. But that is not the only thing they are doing. Also, I guess in college basketball, the Ivy League has already canceled their conference tournament, which is the next step in kind of things. Just people were trying to decide, like whether or not a game should be played, or should they just play them without fans? Should they just cancel things, and stuff like that. So the Ivy League decided to step in already, and reward their two regular season conference champions. I think it was Yale. I know it was Yale, and it was somebody else. I'm trying to remember what on the women's side. Was it like Princeton? Let me double check. I know there was a tweet about this that I bookmarked from earlier. Oh, okay. Well, this is Jeff Goldman just mentioned the men, but let me see. I know there's a woman. And obviously there's a woman in here. Why can't I find it? Well, I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but I did want to know the woman. I forget. I think it's like Princeton, but I might have got that one wrong. But regardless, the Ivy League has canceled its tournament. Like I said, so the regular season winner will enter the tournament we'll enter the NCAA tournament, which, I mean, we'll talk about maybe next segment if that should or will even go down. I mean, like I said, I'll discuss my take on that. But there was a Yale player, Bryce Aiken, who was very unhappy with the decision. He tweeted out, horrible decision and total disregard for the players and teams that have put their hearts into this season. This is wrong on so many levels, and the Ivy League should do its due diligence to find a better solution. Everyone knows the risks of playing. Well, obviously, he's not the team that got in, so I can understand why he feels that way. But at the same time, it's like, maybe this is the best alternative. Like, there's a reason why you hold... I mean, the Ivy League is kind of, not to get too sidetracked, but the Ivy League they just got a tournament, like, not that long ago. Like, they didn't used to have a conference tournament, if I remember correctly. So this is even this aspect of it is pretty new. But at the same time, it's like there's a regular season winner for a reason. Like, you play the regular season games, and you figure out who's the best team in the conference through the regular season. Like that. That's a thing that people keep track of and is taken account for. The conference tournaments are really just for those. It's really just for like the Cinderella teams, like the teams that are maybe like 5th or 6th in the conference that can probably on the bubble that'll sneak their way in. Because most of even if you're the number one team in the conference, if you lose in the first or second round, well, I guess Ivy League is a little bit different, just because most of those guys don't send two teams. So some of the small conferences it matters a little bit more. But at the same time, the regular season matters as well. So while the conference tournament does matter, shouldn't be like all that matters in terms of who gets in. But I guess in certain conferences it does, just because not enough big name schools. But if you're like a Big 12 school, like if you're Kansas or whatever, if they don't win the conference tournament, they're not going to get in. If say Like Kentucky doesn't win the conference tournament, they're going to get in. Like that, it doesn't matter. Florida State, Duke, like there's certain teams it doesn't matter for. But obviously, I guess for schools in a conference where they generally only send one school, it does matter. So I can understand why they're mad. I think there's even a petition to kind of get it back in place. But at the same time, I understand why the Ivy League was like, look, it's not worth it, because that's a lot of games between the the beginning stages and then the final. Like, there's a lot of games. A lot of fans got to come out. There's a lot of people being mixed in all over the place with the disease and stuff. So it's just not worth, and to them it wasn't worth the risk. So I get it. And this kind of goes on to my next point, was that there are people, in theory, could just play the games without anybody in the stadium. That's something that the NBA has talked about doing. Something I think we've seen the soccer around the world do. Obviously, I guess baseball's talked about it. Hockey's talked about it. And I know this was something that LeBron wasn't in favor for in the beginning, because he was like, I want to play for the fans. So if they're not coming, then I won't play. And now he's kind of backed off that a little bit, just because he sees how dangerous it could be in these large group settings. I mean, they're canceling music festivals. Well, they might cancel it. I think Rolling Loud put out the Wolf of Wall Street video saying that they're not leaving. So I mean, good for them. But they're canceling a lot of things. They just canceled the New York Marathon. There's a lot of big events where there's a mass gathering of people are getting canceled. And obviously you can't just, you could just cancel the NBA season, but they're not going to do that, because that wouldn't happen. So then the next step would be to play those games without anybody in the arena. And that would be interesting to me, just because I think a lot of the fun, obviously not being a professional athlete, but a lot of the fun comes from that fan engagement, whether it's cheering, booing, whatever. A lot of players can thrive off of that, and just not have that aspect there, and you're playing basically it's like a scrimmage in practice. That'd be interesting to see and to hear, just because it's like a different dynamic with the games. And it's just I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about if they should do that. Like, if it's that bad, I don't even think it's. Like I said, it's too. They can't cancel the games because there's too much money poured into these stuffs like this. But it's just one of those things where they're kind of in a tough spot where you don't really know what to do, and you have a lot of decisions to make and a lot of events coming up, which we'll talk about in the next segment. There's a lot of big events coming up that may have to either be postponed or canceled or something because of the coronavirus situation, because you don't want to put people at risk and then be the reason why this thing becomes more widespread than it already is. I think there's confirmed cases in 36 of the 50 states. And in terms of now, the whole population of America, there's not that many people that have it, but enough people have it to where it's all right, this is something you need to at least be mindful of. This isn't Ebola or Zika from years past, where it was very minor. It might have been big in other parts, in other countries around the world, but it was very minor over here. This is it's touching every country, every continent. They're very, I guess, outside of really Africa, which is a topic for a person with more knowledge about the stuff than me as to why that is. But it's just there's very few areas that aren't touched by this. But there needs to be precautions taken, and it was nice to see the league start to take those precautions on their own without, like I said, instead of being reactionary to, which it seems like America is kind of doing in terms of we don't have, they didn't make enough, they don't have enough tests yet to test everybody, which is, I was talking about that with my family earlier. That's a different conversation for a different podcast. But instead of being reactionary, they need to do something and get out in front of this, and I appreciate the sports leagues for doing that, just because, like I said, you don't want to have a massive situation and be a part of the reason why it spread throughout the country. So, yeah, so as I was saying, after this break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some big events that are coming up in the sports world that that will be affected by this if it doesn't get controlled, which, it sounds like it's going to get worse before it gets better, because they don't even have the capability to test to see who does and doesn't have it just yet. So it seems like this is something that they're going to have to deal with. So, we're going to talk about some upcoming sporting events that may need to be altered due to this virus. So we'll talk about those and my opinion on that and like what I think people should do and all that fun stuff. So we'll talk about that right after this break. So stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Obviously, as we discussed with the Ivy League situation and canceling conference tournaments, the biggest event that's going to start very, very soon is the NCAA tournament. And now, there is way, way, way too much money tied to this event for them to cancel it. Obviously, I mean, it makes the NCAA billions of dollars every year. So, you could argue that they could and should cancel it, but they obviously won't. So, that's not shocking. But, I mean, if there's no fans, I would imagine that's significantly going to affect things. I mean, just like in terms of, like I said, I don't know how much, a lot of their money is probably tied to the TV rights, so that stuff will still go on as planned. But, I mean, I imagine announcing the games would be weird. I know I saw a clip of, like, in one of the spring training games, I don't think they let people in, or maybe just that many people didn't come. And the guy was announcing it like it was a golf tournament, which was like kind of funny. But like, we can't do that for 48 minutes. That's absurd. But yeah, it's just gonna be weird. Playing in a game like that's gonna be weird, where there's just like no noise, just like the squeaking of the court and like the blowing and like the whistles blowing and like anything yelled out on the court, I guess. But it's one of those things where like especially when you have so many different areas. And well, I guess even that, I don't know if that makes it better or worse, just not thinking about it, because since you have so many different areas, so many different arenas that you play these games in different regions, I should say, that you play these games in, all of them are also affected. Like, it's not just like, obviously the NCAA is losing money as a whole from the revenue, but like these arenas or these venues are losing money because they're, like, a lot of that money was going to be from like ticket sales or merchandise or whatever, that they're not going to have. They just have the events with no fans. So I'm interested to see like how much the money will tie into the decision one way or the other. But at the same time, you kind of can't have fans at these games. Like I said, especially when you have people traveling from all over. You have people, alright, you're going to have teams from this, like, play at this venue at one week, and then next week they're playing at this venue. Then if they go on, they play at this venue, and like they're going to be traveling all over the country, different teams. So you can't, and then obviously the fans are coming from all over, so you can't risk. I would be shocked if you can't really, if they decide to risk having just a mass influx of people from all over come all join together at these games, because like obviously among many things to kind of help prevent the spread of this virus, one of the things is that they've said is to try to avoid large settings. And I guess with large, I think I saw someone, there was like a tweet that said some say settings over like 4,000 or 5,000 people, and obviously most of these venues hold more than 4,000 or 5,000 people. So they would obviously classify under areas that you should try to stay away from. So, but just like they can't cancel the whole tournament because that's just not going to happen. But yeah, I think that's what we're going to see a lot of. Just a lot of games played with no fans, which is going to be weird. It's going to be so weird. Just like I'm saying, just hearing like nothing, no cheering, no booing, no loud uproars, no nothing. There's like literally just nothing. You're going to hear nothing. You're just going to hear nothing as the games are being played. It's going to be absurd, but I think that's probably the best case scenario for. And this extends past the NCAA tournament. This probably goes for like basketball games in the future. They probably have to do it soon. Especially if like another big state. Well, I mean, because I think like the biggest epicenter was Washington, but I think now it's like in like New Rochelle, New York. I think is the next biggest, or maybe is the biggest epicenter of the virus right now. And obviously, if it infects New York City, then all bets are off on what's going to happen. Because if it can infiltrate a city that big, then it can infiltrate anywhere. Though, I mean, obviously more people are coming in and out of the city, and more people are coming from all over, taking public transportation in and out of the city. Like I said, there's 2 airports, so that's different than most places. But at the same time, and obviously it has a lot more people than most places, when most other cities and towns do. But at the same time, it's like I said, it's one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest cities, one of the biggest attractions in the country, New York City. So, if they were to go into a shutdown, then that would just mess up everything. Like that means like no Knicks games, no Nets games, or people can't come in and use the Garden for anything. Like it'd be a mess. But yeah, so I think just for the time being, it seems like playing games with no fans is probably the best case scenario. But all right, so that works for NCAA tournament. That works for probably some regular season games. I guess that probably have to work for the playoffs, stuff like that. But thinking back to some other different events that are going to be going on soon, what about the NFL draft in like a month? Now, obviously, the NFL has lucked out to a degree. The fact that they're not in season right now, so they don't really have to worry about this stuff necessarily. They're kind of just going to wait it out and see what happens. But the NFL draft was going to be a big thing for Las Vegas. This is like the first thing that was going to happen there, with them obviously getting a new team, and obviously having never been to a draft, but seeing, especially since they started moving it around a little bit, it's been a great opportunity for fans to travel to different locations and get to see the draft. Just because then there's a lot of everyone's outside, everyone's standing around each other, they're all cheering, they're all yelling and supporting, and that's just like, and obviously it's not from what I think I know, that it's not that bad in Nevada or Las Vegas right now, though obviously you never know. It wasn't that bad in Italy a couple weeks ago either, and then you see where they're at, unfortunately. So there is that. But yeah, so the draft, it's like, can you really have that many people not only just around each other, obviously, because that's problem number one, but then you're going to have all the draftees there, their families, the commissioner's going to be there, team reps or team, I don't know, I guess you have, not necessarily team reps, so they'll be back in wherever they're at on the phone, but there's got to be some sort of team representatives there, like placing, I don't know exactly who the people on site that take the call, but I think they represent the team in some way, so you have them there, and then they may go back to their respective cities, may come in contact with, and now they bring it back to their coaching staffs or their front office. It's a whole mess. So you probably can't have that, but then it's just like, all right, so what do? Do you cancel the draft? Do you postpone the draft? Which you can't, because that messes things up. Because obviously you want to get those guys in for like before mini camp starts and OTAs and all stuff, and obviously get them ready for training camp in July. But do you cancel it? Do you postpone it? Do you hold it with no fans? Which, again, that might be even more weird, because just like at that point, you might as well not even. You don't even need to. I mean, and I guess you can't cancel it because again, a lot of this comes down to money, and obviously the ESPN and ABC and NFL Network, they all paid good rights for the coverage of the draft, so I don't think they're just gonna. I mean, the league already got their money, so it is what it is. But from their standpoint, they want to make good on their investment. So they're not. I don't think you can just cancel the draft. But it's like, is there a need to announce it if there's no fans? Like, you could just have the picks turn in and you just, like, pop them up on the screen and then you just, like, talk about it. Like, you don't need... Like, the players after, especially after the first round, no one even gets called up, really, anyway. I mean, the names get called out, but no one's, like, coming up to the stage. Or what have you. So, just, like, the names just pop up on the screen and then you just call them and then there's, like, you see the videos of the guys crying or whatever. What I'm saying is that just what they're going to do? I mean, yeah, there's... Like I said, the NFL's kind of been lucky to escape this for the time being, but they're not going to be escaped forever. They have an event coming up in a little over a month. And then, speaking of that, what about, like, pro days? Like, they made it through the combine. It seems fine, which they lucked out that it wasn't that bad yet. But then, like, these pro days coming up, you got people that will be traveling all over the country to meet with players, to be with players, to be around players. And they're all in the media people, too, but then they're all in those enclosed... I mean, this is not as tightly compacted as, like, a game would be, but it's still going to be next to each other. All the scouts, all the front office executives, personnel people are going to be next to each other, near each other. They're going to be traveling on planes to different places around the country. You never know who could get exposed to what and how that could spread throughout the country. So it's like, what do you do for these pro days? Do you like, how do you determine who gets credit? I mean, who gets the credentials to attend, who doesn't? Because obviously the pro days is a big thing for, some smaller school or smaller or lesser known guys, because that weren't invited to the combine or maybe didn't put up the performance they wanted at the combine, got to show themselves. And obviously it's a situation for the elite guys, like say like a Tua. Like if he can't have a pro day, then you're going based solely on the medical, which I mean it seems like it's good. Up until this point, at least, and then just his past tape, but you're not going to be able to see what he looks like now. Or I guess maybe you could bring him in for a personal workout, or is that just what they're going to do? Are they just going to like extendate pro days, and if you want to bring in a guy for a workout, then you can, and if not, then they just have to go in with blind faith. Like it's a very weird situation that the teams are going to be in. Like obviously XFL, what do they do about that? Do they just like not have fans at their games when they kind of need it more than anything? Just because they're still trying to grow their lead, they don't have an established fan base just that's going to be willing to support and watch it on TV or whatever. They don't have that built in yet, like to say the NBA does or the MLB or even like NHL. What are they going to do? NHL playoffs? I mean, they already kind of talked about no media, but are they going to play the Stanley Cup playoffs with no fans? Seems very likely. Like I guess when's the Kentucky Derby? May? What do you do with that? Do you just not have fans at the Kentucky? Do you postpone the Kentucky Derby? Or cancel it this year? Like what? Like same thing, kind of with the Masters. Like what do? You just play? I mean, Masters is already a quiet sport, so if they play it with no fans, I don't imagine that's probably the only sport where it's like, all right, we can play this with no fans. It's not that big of a deal because you can only cheer after the person makes contact with the ball, so there's not really a whole lot of cheering necessary. I mean, obviously, a lot of people play golf with like no one around anyway. So maybe the Masters might be the only sport where, or the golf might be the only sport where it kind of makes sense not to have any fans because again, a lot of people, but also like it's a quiet sport, so you don't really need the fan base as much as you do in like a basketball or like or most other sports really. But yeah, like what do you do with that? I think the Daytona 500 already happened, right? I don't know too much about NASCAR, but the Daytona 500, yeah, because that's when they had the bad accident. Yeah, okay, that already happened. So they're good, but then yeah, I mean, in sports like that, like what do you do? Like what do you do with those? Because I mean, that's the same thing. It's a big gathering of people in a stadium or a racetrack or whatever however you want to call it, and you run the risk of people getting caught up. But yeah, no, this will be interesting to see and monitor as this continues to go on, not only as it gets worse in this country, because like I said, it seems as if we're heading towards worse before we get better, though. I mean, you never know. Maybe we can nip this in the bud before it gets too bad. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where and what they do and who kind of reacts first, because obviously they put out the joint statement about no media. And that was the easy thing to do. The hard thing would be to kick the fans out. But I think it's something that I very much believe could be coming very, very soon. I just don't know. I don't know if anybody wants to be the first person to do it. But someone's going to be, and then it's going to start the snowball effect of everybody's going to do it. I mean, like I said, they're already doing it overseas and stuff where it's bad in other countries for their different soccer or football league, whatever you refer to it as. But yeah, they're already doing it overseas because it's bad in other parts of the world, and it's not that bad here yet. But again, give it enough time, it might get that to that point. So yeah, this will be interesting. And this is something that, and when you heard about a couple, I guess I don't even know when it started, like over a month or so ago in China, when the first couple cases kind of came down, you didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. But now, as it's going, and it's been continuing, it seems like we as a country need to take it more and more seriously. And hopefully these sports leagues take it as seriously as well, because this is not a good situation. You want to put your fans or your players in, or just anyone involved with the league. You don't want to put them in that position to be exposed to this disease. So we shall see what these leagues decide to do. We will see what these leagues decide to do. But yeah, after this break, we're going to come back, and we have another update on the NFL CBA vote, this time involving the players, this time involving players and the voting process. So we're going to talk about that and kind of what's happening with that and what the next steps may be for that. But yeah, we'll talk about all that stuff right after the break. So stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, this culture and society we are in, where we don't read all the terms and agreements of the things that we sign up for, seems to be catching up to the players. As it has been reported, this is from Yahoo Sports, that NFL players want to change their CBA votes, but the NFLPA won't let them. Voting on the NFL proposed collective bargaining agreement has been extended to 11:59 on Saturday, but it already may be too late for some players. According to Dan Graziano and Cameron Wolfe of ESPN, the NFLPA players' representatives voted down a proposal that would have allowed players who have already voted to change their vote. The reason the NFLPA voted on this is because so many players have reportedly asked if they could change their vote, which is a big yikes. It's impossible to know why a reported significant number of players wanted to change their vote. The most you can deduce is they learned new information that made them want to change their vote, and there has been a lot of important CBA information released in the past 24 hours. Eric Reed tweeted out on Monday, giving the players more information about the 456-page agreement that they had to vote on. Reed asked his lawyers to look at the CBA from a player's perspective, and he says that they found bad news for the players, basically like, this is not really... He had a summary of how bad it was. But, yeah, the Reed's lawyers believe that the NFLPAs were getting a bad deal, and obviously a lot of people agreed. We talked about a lot of the big names, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Richard Sherman, JJ, Todd Gurley, Jarvis, to go on and on. have already expressed their displeasure in the deal. But, yeah, I mean, that some people didn't care or haven't cared, but they apparently care now. Russell Okung, a member of the NFLPA's executive committee, also filed a lawsuit against the NFLPA this past, what was it? I think it was Monday, too. He alleged that the NFLPA engaged in bad faith negotiating. He accused the NFLPA executive director, DeMaurice Smith. I think it's DeMaurice Smith, of ignoring the executive committee's wishes and forcing a vote on the CBA. The executive committee had already voted against the CBA twice, but it was passed on to a vote on the NFLPA player representatives anyway. And how significant is this? Not allowing their page to change it could be a big deal. Just because, obviously, if it passes and people feel like, hey, we didn't. Let me rephrase that, because you can't say you didn't now, because they have access. They got the full agreement. They had a chance to read it if they wanted to, or just not. Again, they don't have to read it. I'm not 100% certain Eric Reed even read the whole thing. I don't know if any player would or should be required to. That's 400 plus pages is a lot to read. And understand, obviously, because not like you could read a book and you might not. You can go online. Someone will give you a good summary, or you can get a good review on the book, so you can help understand some things. If you're just reading it on your own, then you have to try to figure it out for yourself, or you could talk to, I guess, your player rep or what have you. But it didn't seem like everybody wanted to do that. So then, yeah, if you don't want to do that, a lot of these guys have lawyers, agents, whoever. Have them read it. Have them look it over. See, like, hey, are we getting a good deal? Are we getting a bad deal? Should I vote for this? Should I vote against this? They have resources available for you if you're not just going to read it yourself. And whether it's positive, whether it's a yes, they're changing to a yes, they're changing to a no, it seems like these people didn't read it, which to me is absurd. And it's absurd because this is their livelihood in the league for the next 10 years. Now, granted, not all these people will be around for the full extent of those 10 years. But they're still going to be affected by this. Whether it's this year, next year, 5 years from now, whatever, they're still going to be affected. So the fact that you could vote on something not having read the full extent of the thing doesn't make any sense to me. And again, this is not like agreeing to the terms and conditions on your iPhone. This is not agreeing to terms when you sign up for something, or you trying to log onto some Wi-Fi. You have to agree to some terms and conditions. Like, that's not to say you shouldn't read those, because you probably should, just in case. But many people don't, just because they don't take the time. And it's not that, in the grand scheme of things, generally speaking, it's not that important. And then obviously, you can't really, if you don't agree to it, then you basically just can't use it. So it's a different scenario. But in this scenario, where you actually have the ability to vote yes or no, and your vote could affect what is being brought onto the league, whether it's like I'm saying, if you're in agreement, like if you like the CBA, you like the change that they made, or you have a voice to be able to say, I want this in place. If you don't like it, then you have a voice to say, I don't want this in place, and we should go back to the drawing board and renegotiate some things. And I'm saying, if that is the case, which it seems like it is here, then you would, in theory, want to be as informed as you can be. And I think I mentioned on the last podcast, like Aaron Rodgers talking about how he tried to reach out to players and they just didn't get back to him about it. Which I think, like I said, the owners had done a good job of kind of pitting the players against each other, with the players not really realizing, like, hey, look, at the end of the day, we're all on the same side. Whether we disagree on how good or how bad the CBA is, we're all on the same side. We're all fighting for the same thing, fighting for our own rights. And no one's going to fight for them except for themselves. Like, the owners are going to fight for them. The NFLPA may, to an extent, might not fight for them. So they have no one to go to but themselves. So they need to be, not to be on the same page completely, but they need to at least be on similar pages. And that's not they're even on that. Just because, like I said, Aaron Rodgers is in being the one example of him trying to reach out to some of his teammates and them just not even getting back to him about the CBA, which is unfortunate, though. I mean, seeing as Aaron Rodgers' own family doesn't talk to him, maybe he's not the nicest person, and he's not the easiest person to get along with. But that's, I mean, I'm not going to judge Aaron Rodgers' character. I don't know him. But yeah, that was just weird that no one got back to him. But yeah, I think it's just not, it wasn't that surprising when you look at it from his perspective. Like, if you're a borderline player, you're just like, alright, these couple things are good enough for me. I'm not really worried about the long-term health benefits, or I'm not really worried about the exact amount of revenue sharing that we have. Like, I'm just like, hey, look, there's more active roster spots on game day. There's more practice squad spots. Minimum salaries raised. That's good enough for me. And obviously, that's not all of the 400 plus pages that are in the CBA, and I think that's the issue. But yeah, that's kind of where the NFL and their players are at right now. That they're at a point where you just are kind of stuck, especially when it seems like, to a degree, your own players association isn't fighting for you as much as they could be. But yeah, the vote, I guess we'll know what, Sunday or Saturday. Wait, because what 11:59 p.m. on Saturday, so you will know like midnight Sunday. I was a little bit confused on how you word that. But we'll know by Sunday morning, basically, like what the decision is, I think. But yeah, this is a big one because I've held firm on that. I think they should vote no and potentially hold out, potentially cause a lockout, because playing 17 games would be out of the question for me if I'm in that situation. Now, granted, I'm not in that situation. I'm not in the situation where I need to pay. Like I said, I don't need to pay I need to support my kids. I don't have to pay lawyers, agents, different things. That's not something that is affecting my life currently. So maybe if I was in that situation, I would view things differently. But I don't think a little extra money is worth an extra game and more wear and tear on your body when it's already pretty well known how dangerous 16 games is on the body, and adding a 17th game plus potentially adding another playoff game. I guess what, in theory, you could play 4 now? No, it'll still be 3. It'll be 3. I'll say, yeah, you're playing an extra game during the regular season. I don't know if that's necessarily worth, like I said, a little bump in pay. Especially when it seems like, and again, I haven't read the whole CBA, so I can't say exactly all the points that are in there, good or bad. But enough players, if it were that good, enough players, there wouldn't be players speaking out about it. I mean, granted, no one agrees on everything. So you just look at like elections. You can't. It's not like we just nominate one person and that's who's the president. Like, they nominate each person from different parties, and even within the parties, they don't always agree on the same candidate. So like, whatever. It's impossible to get everybody, that many people on board on the same thing. It's very hard. I mean, people will tell you Jay-Z isn't like a top 5 rapper, and that's just flat out wrong. But, I mean, that's just the nature of opinions. People have opinions that you don't agree with on literally everything. It's impossible for you to agree with everybody on everything. But that's where we are. But yeah, so it's just this, like I said, the CBA situation has kind of been a mess from the beginning, and doesn't seem like it's becoming any less of a mess as the vote draws near. But I thought that was interesting, the fact that players are trying to change their vote, which, again, before you vote on something, which, again, kind of stem back to an election, before you vote on something, be informed. Because you can't, like, in most other things, you can't just, like, take your vote back. So I understand why they didn't allow it, because it's like, you can't just, that's just a bad precedent for being like, oh, yeah, people can just always change their votes up until last. Like, no, just, like, be informed and don't vote until you have to. It wasn't due tonight. Like, it's not due till Saturday at 11:59. If you want to go and learn more information, you can learn more information up until that point. You didn't have to vote this early. So I understand why, to a degree, they didn't let them re-vote just because they didn't force them to, and it's not their fault for that you weren't informed when you voted. You had every opportunity, every chance to be as informed as you needed to be, one way or the other, whether you were a yes or whether you were a no. You had a chance to be as informed as you needed to be to make a good decision. If you didn't take that opportunity, unfortunately, that is on you. That's not on the NFLPA, and to an extent. Now, whether or not the deal is good or bad, that's a separate story. But in terms of the vote, they didn't force you to vote before it needed to happen. Nor did they force you to vote on something and you not be completely informed. Because they're giving everybody the resources to be as informed as they can be. If you choose not to be, again, that is your prerogative. But you can't be mad at someone else for you not being informed and making an uninformed decision. That's not somebody else's fault. If you were a player that didn't read through it or didn't fully understand and you voted one way or the other, it happened. Hopefully for you, what has been brought to light for you, it has been brought to light for other players, and you guys don't all make a mistake. But yeah, this is an interesting situation the players have found themselves in. But we should have a resolution by the end of this weekend, and at least from there, we'll know one way or the other whether we have a new CBA or we're potentially going back to the drawing board and maybe even staring at a lockout for the 2021 season. But all that stuff will come to fruition very, very soon. So, yeah. But after this break, we're going to come back and I'm going to discuss ESPN's Monday Night Football plan, because they had a plan in place. Obviously, the Peyton Manning thing hasn't become official yet. See if that even happens. But they had a part of their plan was to get Al Michaels. So we're going to give an update on if that's going to happen. But yeah, we'll talk about that right after this break. So stay tuned.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Podcast Network. So, ESPN, Monday Night Football. What are they going to do? Because their plan was to bring on one Al Michaels to help join him with Peyton Manning, or trade for Al Michaels. So technically he's under contract still, so I don't exactly know how trades work, because it's not like in sports. Like if we were going to go after executive, I know they were talking about this with the Knicks and like Masai Ujiri. Like you could trade like first round picks or whatever, or even if they went after like I don't know, like a Sam Presti or something like that, they could have just traded picks, or maybe even the Bulls could do this. Like whatever, you could trade picks to get front office guys. I don't understand how it would work, how a trade would work in terms of announcers. I'm not exactly certain how that would go. But it seems like NBC Sports has declined. This is from the New York Post. NBC Sports has declined ESPN's initial request to engage in trade talks to acquire Al Michaels, according to sources. We look forward to Al competing completing his contract, I should say, and calling Sunday Night Football games on NBC. Greg Hughes, an NBC Sports spokesman, told the Post. ESPN declined to comment. ESPN had put Al Michaels, who was 75, atop the list for potential dream Monday Night Football for a potential dream Monday Night Football booth with Peyton Manning. Al Michaels had 2 years remaining on his deal with Sunday Night Football, and Mike Tirico is already set to take over. At that time, when Michaels, I'm assuming, just steps away. I mean, he'll be kind of old. I don't know if he'll still want to call games, but maybe he will. Tirico may call more games over the next 2 seasons and is a new face of NBC, which is why there could be a potential path in NBC/Comcast executives change their minds, if they change their minds, and Michaels wants to explore a move. The NBC executives have relayed the message that they're not really, they don't really see that happening yet, but it can't be ruled out that the topic could be revisited. And apparently he was traded 14 years ago. Not exactly sure how it happened, but it took a month to complete. So this isn't by any means done. Yeah, so obviously, like I said, they ESPN on their ends begun talks with Peyton Manning. No, I mean, he obviously hasn't said specifically one way or the other whether he wants to take the job, but they're offering him a lot of money, so that might be hard to turn down. ESPN has not yet informed Joe Tessitore or Booger McFarland that they will not return to Monday Night Football. Though Tessitore and /or McFarland are not out yet, ESPN has several plans as it tries to figure out its Monday Night booth. The Post previously reported, obviously, that they had interest in Phillip Rivers, and though he wants to keep playing, ESPN had passed on Kurt Warner for Jason Witten 2 years ago, but Warner is a name that can't be ruled out. I think he does stuff with NFL Network now, so you never know. Maybe the grass is greener. And also, I guess, so now it's coming from a standpoint of, like, where does ESPN go from here? They could look at, I guess, obviously, you could look at Tessitore, keep him, and just, like, replace McFarland. That's not that out of the question. Just because at least you have somebody that's already in place, that's already called games. And obviously he's not exactly Al Michaels, but he's been around, he's been on ESPN, he's called Monday Night Football games for the last 2 years on top of calling other things. So it's not like he's called like college games or whatever. Like he's not new to the business. And obviously that could be a decent pairing with Peyton, just because you need somebody, not that you needed a season event like Al Michaels, we just need somebody that knows what they're doing. That's why, who is it? Jim Nance. I'm pretty sure Jim Nance is the guy with Tony Romo. Like that, it works because Jim Nance has been around for a while, and Tony Romo obviously was great at his job, but you need to be able to be with. Like if he was with a newer guy, who knows if it would have worked. Tony Romo would have worked as well as obviously you're only as good as your partner in these types of things. It's kind of like a dance, like. If one person's doing all the heavy lifting, it's gonna look weird, aka sound weird. But because they kind of play off each other pretty well, and obviously Tony got his own little thing in with the predicting of the plays, like he was good at that. That was his thing. That kind of helped him getting the notoriety he has. It worked. But yeah, so like I said, ESPN. There's other options they could go to from different networks if they wanted to stay at CBS. Well, no, not stay at CBS because I meant to say they can't really stay at NBC unless they're going to get Tirico, but it doesn't seem like they're going to get Tirico because why would they? Tirico seems to go to be the guy when Al Michaels leaves. Plus, he was already at ESPN. I thought it ended kind of weird, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so if you want to go to like Fox, you can go to Kevin Burkhardt, who's like the number 2 guy behind obviously Troy and Joe Buck. He's the number 2 guy. He calls some games. He's been calling XFL games, so he has experience. And obviously, maybe that could be a cool. If they wanted to go younger, that could be a cool pairing. You could go Iron Eagle from CBS. Obviously, he's their number 2 guy, I believe. And Iron Eagle's great. I mean, he calls everything, so that would be a little interesting to see if they. I mean, he calls basketball for Yes. He obviously calls football for CBS. Can do a variety of sports. So if he was brought on to ESPN, it'd be interesting to see because they wouldn't. Obviously, he could do Monday Night Football, but Monday Night Football is only, like I said, a certain part of the season, certain part of the year, I should say. So it'd be interesting to see what they utilized him for outside of that, because, like I said, he can call other sports. So it'd be foolish, in my opinion, to just limit him to just that. But hey, you never know. And then also, I guess you could. Another one, if you wanted to do that, you could also try to get Kevin Harlan, who's apparently CBS's number 3 guy. And he calls Monday Night Football games on Westwood One already. So, I mean, I'll just get him off the radio into the booth. But also, I guess he's another guy who calls basketball games, so I don't understand. I don't know how it would work if he was going to work for ESPN, if he would just strictly, because I think he calls the TNT games. The big TNT games. So that would be kind of weird, like what he would do from there. Because obviously, I don't think he would just completely want to do away with that. But, you never know. And also, just like on their own network, like Steve Levy, he's calling some of the he's called college basketball games. He's called other things. He's calling like the XFL games now. Maybe he could be a guy who's been around for a while. Maybe you bump up like Chris Fowler to do the Monday Night Football stuff. Obviously, I mean, you don't want to break up him and Kirk Herbstreit. That's your A team for college football. But I mean, maybe he's looking for a promotion to a degree. I don't know. Maybe do you take this in like a players only TNT thing, where you just have a bunch of former players or just like maybe you take like him. I mean, that's the thing. It's just like with football, it's so hard. You don't want too many people, because that was kind of the issue when they had like Witt and Booger and Joe Tessitore, just because it was like too many people, and you don't want to like topple over each other. But like the players only thing they have that doesn't work, in my opinion, or at least didn't work. And it seems like I haven't listened to as many players only broadcasts, but it sounds like they've added Stan Van Gundy to be one of the to be a new analyst, and he's kind of helping guide the broadcast a little bit better than it did, because obviously that was the issue with players only, was the fact that the players they were just saying things. They like an analyst is an analyst, and a play-by-play guy is a play-by-play guy. When you have players only, you just have a bunch of guys that are in theory analysts. So there's no one really leading the direction of the broadcast, leading the direction of the conversations. You're kind of just all talking about random stuff. And obviously, you on for play-by-play stuff, you want somebody that's gonna kind of keep everything in line, make sure you guys aren't getting too out of whack with kind of like the topics or what have you. Kind of want to make sure everybody's still on the same page, on that same train of thought. Just because if you don't, then obviously it's going to get very confusing very easily. But yeah, so I said maybe they could go a players only route and just have like not necessarily like a huge name, but just like a decent, like you keep Tessitore, have Peyton and like maybe have like a Steve Young or like a Louis Riddick or Dan Orlovsky. Like I don't know, just like someone who they wanted to. I mean, maybe you don't want too many quarterbacks, but it seems like that's what a lot of the analysts are anyway, or quarterbacks. But yeah, so maybe not Dan yet. He's a little too. He's not seasoned enough. But yeah, maybe like a Louis Riddick, who's called games already. I think him, Steve Levy, and what was it, Brian Greasy, I believe, called like the second Monday Night Football game last year, where they always have the doubleheader to open the season, and I think they called the second game. So they had a 3-person team there. It worked. Maybe they could try that. But yeah, no, ESPN, honestly, they're not short on options. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of what they decide to go with to pair Peyton Manning with, because obviously that's going to be a very important aspect of it, and that's going to be very vital to the success or failure of this. Obviously, Peyton, again, should be good. He's very knowledgeable, but at the same time, he's never done this. He's going to need some help, some direction, and obviously pairing him with the right partner will be the first step in making sure that happens. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Though I think if they were going to go, like I said, if they were going to go for B, I think an Iron Eagle kind of makes sense because, I mean, you see how easy Richard Jefferson has transitioned from being a player to an analyst, and obviously that some of that is on him. He's a good talker. But at the same time, being able to be paired with a guy like Iron Eagle probably makes it a little bit easier for him than it did if you just pair with anybody else. And it seemed like Iron Eagle's done a number of stuff. He's a great play-by-play guy. For this article, it said it seems to me he's like they compare him to John Stockton just in terms of his ability to make anybody better around him. And obviously, not that Peyton Manning needs to be made better to a degree, but at the same time, it can't hurt. Like I said, for a guy that hasn't done it, it can't hurt. But we shall see. But yeah, after we come back, speaking of Iron Eagle, seeing as he covers games for the Nets. The Nets, obviously, as we know, need a new coach. Tyronn Lue was an option, but it seems like another guy that could be an option is Mark Jackson. So I'm going to talk about them, compare the two options, see which one I would want, or just the way I like to pose the cons and see who I'd prefer if I were a Nets fan to be my next head coach. So we'll talk about that right after this break. So stay tuned.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
GSMC Podcast Network. So, as I mentioned in the last episode, Tyronn Lue is a name that was quickly brought up as an option for the Nets, just because obviously connections with Kyrie, and he's not a head coach right now. Maybe he probably still wants to be a head coach. All that fun stuff. So, it seems like a reasonable connection. But there's another connection, another link that's already been made. Again, this is from Yahoo Sports. Obviously, let's say Atkinson and Nets parted ways. But apparently, Coach Mark Jackson is already being linked to the job due to his relationship with Durant's agent, Rich Kleinman. Peter Versailles at Peter Versailles 1 tweeted this out. I don't want to jinx Mark Jackson, but logic dictates, as well as his relationship with Kevin Durant, his agent, and Kyrie, make him prohibitive hometown favorite to coach Brooklyn next year. It says Kleinman grew up a diehard Knicks fan and became a huge fan of Jackson during his childhood. The two now have become close friends. And Kleinman wanted Jackson to get the Knicks head coaching job, but it seems like a certainty to try to get him to get the Brooklyn job, obviously, with Durant and Kyrie there. So that makes sense. And obviously, Jackson coached the Warriors for 3 years, as we all know, racking 98 wins in that time. Well, 98 wins in the last two while leading the team to the playoffs. And obviously set the foundation for what the Warriors dynasty would become. While they were successful, there was a lot of dissension in the ranks. Jackson failed to find an assistant coach he was on the same page with, and importantly got into a confrontation with Kirk Lacob and asked for consultant Jerry West to be kept away from practices and team activities, which is not bright because Jerry West may go down as one of the best executives of all time, just in terms of things he's been able to orchestrate. Got Shaq to the Lakers, traded for Kobe, helped build the Warriors dynasty, helped get KD there, and then obviously helped get Kawhi to the Clippers along with PG. So he's done a lot. I don't know why you'd want him away, and obviously he was a great player, but that's a completely different conversation. And I think there was some other issues. Obviously, he's a very religious man. I think there was some religious stuff that went down behind the scenes. Because it wasn't, let's put it this way, it wasn't a happy breakup between him and the Warriors. And then obviously we know the Warriors had great success without him. They went from a second round exit to 5 straight NBA Finals, winning in the very next season, basically, like I said, when they basically just changed like two things. I think they just switched a couple of stars with some of their reserves, and then bada boom, bada boom, they are champions and continue to be champions. And then also they got Kevin Durant, so that worked out for them. And it's just interesting because apparently KD liked the culture the Nets had, but apparently something changed his mind, and that led to Kenny Atkinson no longer being a part of the team. But it would be interesting to see if he likes Mark Jackson, because I mean a lot of people have lobbied for Mark Jackson. Obviously he's good. He's a good analyst, like him, Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, a good team together. Though obviously Jeff complains a little too much about random stuff, so that's kind of an issue. If you're listening to the games, he'll just start rambling about random stuff. And obviously now they're doing a lot of TikTok dances, so if you're not a big TikTok guy, that's kind of weird. But hey, but yeah, so that would break up that team. But again, I would like to believe that Mark Jackson wants to get back into coaching at some point. And it seems like, and like I said, people were linked him to the next job. Now you have this job. You have guys in place in KD and Kyrie that may go to bat for him, where you didn't have that with the Knicks, obviously, because there was no one really to be like, hey, we want Mark Jackson, other than like fans. But yeah, so that's an interesting spot. But like I said, compare him with Tyronn Lue. Who would I want? Now, we're going to lay out the pros and cons here. Pros, let's start with Tyronn Lue. Pros, won a championship, which is an important part. Not that many coaches. I don't care who you have. I mean, there was a lot of coaches. I mean, in his first day in Cleveland, Mike Brown won a lot of games, didn't win a championship with LeBron. So, there is something to that, at least. So, he's won a championship, has dealt with Kyrie before, which may be one of the biggest things, just because it doesn't. I mean, obviously, I don't know Kyrie. I'm not going to badmouth Kyrie. I'm just not that kind of person. I can't talk bad about people that I don't know. But to many people, Kyrie's difficult to deal with, you could say. And at least Tyronn Lue is a person that has dealt with him in the past, so he should have an idea of what he's getting himself into. Like, obviously, Kenny Atkinson had no idea. He didn't even play that much. Kenny Atkinson had no idea. Brad Stevens had no idea. At least now you'd have a coach in place that has an idea of what it's like to coach Kyrie, if he is in fact that difficult. I don't even know if he is. But I'm saying if that is to be believed what people say about how difficult he is to be around and all that stuff. At least you have somebody in place that has dealt with that before, so it's not going to be new to them. So I'm saying you have that. That's another pro. Former player, that's always a pro in these kind of things. People, generally speaking, in these locker rooms, not just in the NBA, in the NFL, wherever, they like coaches that were former players because you have a better idea of what the players are going through, and obviously people just respect people's opinions more when they play. I mean, that's the big discussion with the NBA Twitter world now, is just the fact that, they mock a lot of the guys on NBA Twitter just because they weren't players, so that they don't take their opinions as seriously. And I mean, that's That's their prerogative. That's their right. But that doesn't. You don't need to have played the game of basketball to understand the game of basketball, to an extent. But yeah, so that's another pro. What else? I'm trying to think. What other pros does Tyronn Lue have? I mean, he's been around Doc a numerous times. So he's, like I said, he has a lot of coaching experience, which is another thing that helps. He's not like a newbie. I think he's only ever been the head coach in Cleveland, but he's not like a newbie in terms of coaching ranks. He's been around the way a little bit. But cons. All right, cons. Have LeBron James. That in and of itself, it's hard for me to judge how good of a coach you are. I'm not even sure how good of a coach Steve Kerr is, because I mean, we have the two greatest shooters, and you had Steph playing at a MVP level. Maybe some of that was him, so I got to give him credit for that. But I'm just like, Luke Walton won with that team when Steve Kerr said, "What do you go like 39-4 or something like that?" Mike Brown won with that team. Alvin Gentry won. Like literally everybody that stepped in place to coach that team won with that team. So it's hard to say. And obviously they're struggling this year. I don't want to put all that on Steve Kerr. But I mean, when you look at, I'm trying to think who's like. Yeah, I'm saying it's hard for me to put all that on Steve Kerr because again, no staff, no Clay, KD left, D'Lo was like a weird fit. Even he was in and out of line. Draymond's been in and out of line. They're playing a lot of young guys and guys that normally would not be getting rotation minutes if everybody were healthy. So, like I said, you can't put all that on Steve Kerr. But again, I'm still not certain how good of a coach he is. That's just me personally. Not everybody feels that way. But yeah. So, Coach LeBron doesn't really have a great history of player development, which they may need in Brooklyn, because you have guys like LeVert, who's not a finished product, Jared Allen, who's nowhere near a finished product, Dinwiddie could still get better. You have guys that are going to need, and Claxton, who looks like a promising-ish young player, even. The foreign guys, Musa, Kurucs, potentially even like a Theo Pinson, or who's that other guy? I have to see. That's like their backup point guard now. Shoot, I gotta look up his name. But, you know what I'm saying, there's guys that may need. Oh, they beat the Lakers today? Oh, hold on, I'm about to look that up later. I did not. I just went to the ESPN app and did not know. Oh, Davis missed a three at the brother buzzer. Well, I mean, I'm just saying, they had all that great weekend and lose to the Nets. Yeah, big yikes. So I put a damper on those MVP talks for at least another day. Which, I mean, I could go on a whole different tangent about that, about how the propaganda that is being used, the prop of LeBron, when they were like, they're not even talking about stats anymore, they're talking about like he navigated the China crisis, and like he had to deal with the loss of Kobe, as if every other player in the NBA didn't also deal with the loss of Kobe. Like, all right, let's stop here. But that's, like I said, that's a different conversation. Chioza, that's the point guard, backup point guard. Chioza, TLC, Timothy Luwawu Cabarro. Like I'm saying, they have guys that are going to need some development, and I don't know if Ty Lue's necessarily the guy for that. But hey, what else? Yeah, it's probably my couple biggest cons. Obviously, he played Tristan Thompson too many minutes when he was with the Cavs, so that's never good. But yeah, my biggest cons, because obviously we don't know what KD's going to be at, and there's no guarantee he'll be at the level that LeBron was at. And obviously, it's hard when you have LeBron. How much do you really need a coach? What has? I mean, not that Frank Vogel's done a bad job with the Lakers this year, or necessarily he's done a great job, but like, when LeBron's on the team, it's hard to say how much or how little to say the coach has. So that's that. And then obviously the cons for Mark Jackson. The team, well, pros first. Player development, good. He was way, way early on Steph and Clay being the best shooting backcourt ever, and he was right on that. And again, head coaching experience. Been around the game for a long time, talking about it, coaching it, playing it. Obviously not from, I don't think he's from Brooklyn, but he's been in New York before, so he's not going to be afraid of that spotlight. Obviously, it's not the Knicks, but Oh, he's from Brooklyn, actually. Oh, okay, shoot. So, man, maybe that's actually better for him than the Knicks. But yeah, no, he's like I said, he's been around New York before, knows what it's like, was played for the Knicks, so knows how to handle that aspect of New York, because obviously New York isn't for everybody. When you went to St. John's, so yeah, he's been around, so that might be cool. What else? Those are probably his biggest. It seems to at least be a guy that Kyrie and KD would be in favor of, which is a part of the point in and of itself, just because you want guys that they are going to like. You want guys that are going to run out of town soon. But cons, obviously, the team got better once he left. The way he left was not exactly great. And obviously, we don't know how good of an in-game coach he is, because he hasn't done it in so long. It's been, since 2014, 2015? I think it's been 5-6 years since he last coached. So, you don't know if that time off has improved him, made him realize some things, or he's going to come back and be the same way. That's kind of what you're afraid of. At least you know Tyronn was a head coach recently, and he's an assistant coach now. So he's still around the game. But yeah, so for my money, I still probably go Tyronn Lue, just to be safe, personally. But, like I said, looking at the pros and cons, each of them has their pros, each of them has their cons. And obviously the biggest knock on Tyronn Lue will be the fact that he had LeBron James on his team while he was the head coach. That obviously helps you out a great, great deal. Even though you have to navigate through some injuries and stuff. But like I said, David Blatt got that team to the finals. And people think David Blatt's a terrible coach. I wasn't one of them. But people think he's a terrible coach. And he got that team to the finals. Because LeBron. So, like I said, you only have to be but so good of a coach. I mean, they made the finals with Mike Brown. No one knows how good of a coach Mike Brown. Mike Brown isn't really that great of a coach. He won a lot of games in Cleveland, but he's not that great of a coach. He still went to the finals with him. Like I said, you have LeBron, anything's possible, literally. Shout out to KG. So, like I said, it's hard for me to say one way or the other how good your coaching job is when you have LeBron on your roster. But we will see if Tyler gets that chance, how he will do with KD and Kyrie. So, after this last break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about, shout out to my gamers out there, we got some gaming news in the football universe. Seems like there's at least going to be some new games out there to compete with Madden. To what extent, we will find out in the near future. But yeah, we're going to talk about that, talk about the new deal that came down, and all that fun stuff. So, we will discuss all of that right after the break. So stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
So, like I said, shout out to my gamers out there. As a person that plays mainly sports video games, but video games, this is interesting news to myself, and obviously my other gamers out there. But this is from Pro Football Talk, an article. The NFL announces a deal with 2K to produce non-simulation football video games. The NFL has been Madden only for the last 15 years. RIP, NFL 2K5, one of the best football games ever. especially at the pro level. I mean, obviously the EA college football games were great, but NFL 2K5. I mean, I think I remember. I didn't play it as much when during that year because obviously I was doing a lot of Madden stuff, but I had it after the fact, and I remember playing I don't know how long it was after that, but I remember playing that game maybe a year or two later. It was great. The mechanics were great. The what was it called? The career mode was cool. I think I broke the rushing yard record with I was the running back on the Falcons. I wanted to play with Michael Vick. But yeah, no, that was great. They had the weird. I forget what that mode was where you could play different celebrities. They had Carmen Electra and some other people in there you could play against. And that was cool. They had their own teams. So shout out that game. That game was great. But yeah, the league. Back to this. The league has struck a deal with 2K Sports to make new NFL themed video games beginning in 2021. Per the league's release, those games will be non-simulation football experiences, so they will not be the same kind of games that 2K produced before EA, the makers and bad, got exclusive rights to video game simulating an NFL season in 2005. Expanding the NFL's presence in the world of gaming has become a focus for the league as we look to grow the next generation of our fan base, and reviving our partnership with 2K was a natural step in the effort. NFL Senior Vice President of Consumer Products, Joe Ruggiero, I'm not exactly sure, said in a statement, 2K is a worldwide leader in sports video games with a proven track record for creating best-in-class and award-winning games, and we look forward to sharing more about the projects we are working on with them in the future. EA was a statement after the NFL announcements that said our partnership with the NFL and the NFLPA remains unchanged. That they plan. I don't know. There might be a typo here. New and different experiences in the years to come. So, for the first part, that's good because, to me, Madden needs some competition. Not that Madden is absolutely trash. I don't hate Madden. I still play it. But at the same time, they need just something. There needs to be another football game on the market to at least get Madden to try. That's all that happens. Is they're not really trying that hard. No, I don't want to take that back. Because I know there's a lot of guys that work hard in the game. I don't say they're not trying that hard, but they don't have to try that hard. Due to the fact they're the only game on the market, so it's you're either going to buy this or buy nothing. It's up to you. No matter how good or how bad the game is, you're either going to buy it or you're not. There's not really much you can change. But at least having competition, even though it's not the exact same type of video game, it's not in direct competition with EA and the games that they make with Madden. Well, at least a start. And I guess what non-simulation seems, from my understanding, to be games like the old NFL Blitz games, or I guess maybe NFL Street type of games back in the day, if you remember those, for when from the younger days. Just fun, cool stuff to play, but it's not really obviously simulation based, so it doesn't have the franchise modes and stuff like that. So not exactly a reboot of NFL 2K5 in 2021, because obviously he just has the rights for simulation style games, so you can't just have that. But like I said, we'll see what they have. And obviously 2K is a prominent name in the sports gaming universe. Obviously they make NBA 2K. They make what else? I think they make don't they make a NHL game? But 2K, let me look up what else 2K is for. 2K games. So yeah, they make NBA 2K. What else? They made the old MLB 2K games. They obviously those are kind of out of business now. But yeah, they make NBA 2K. They make. I'm trying to think what else sports related things. That's really it. WWE Borderlands, if you play that kind of stuff. I thought they made like the NHL games too. At least I know they did back in the day. I think EA does that now. But yes, it's mainly just 2K and then the WWE games. So they're big too. And then obviously they have other games that are non sports related. But yeah, so just it's nice for them to get back in the game, if you will, in terms of being able to make a football game. Because again, a lot of people loved the last version of the football game that they made, and honestly, this is not going to be that. But EA just has a kind of monopoly on the sports gaming universe. They have FIFA. They have Madden, they make NHL, they have NBA Live, which no one really plays anymore. And I think they didn't even put out a game this year because they were trying to like fix it up to get it right for next year. They have the UFC, so they have the EA has a lot of games of their own. But yeah, it's just nice to at least give them some level of competition. Because like I said, competition brings the best out of people. And when you know your only thing on the market and there's nothing really to compete with you, it's hard to, in my mind, to motivate you to put out the best thing possible. Because you don't necessarily have to. You can just, like I said, you make whatever, people are going to buy it because there's no other game to play. If they want to play a sports game, whether it's football, soccer, hockey, whatever, they're going to come to EA because that's where the game's at. But if there's at least a different alternative, I mean, these NFL Street games, NBA Street, like those games were very popular when I was a kid, even though they weren't exactly the same type of games like a Madden or like a NBA Live, because 2K wasn't as big back in the day. But they weren't the same kind of games. They weren't as, and it didn't really matter because people just didn't. Not everyone wants to play the Madden all the time. So you want to play stuff where there's like it's off the wall, and you can do like weird trick things. You can play with like different guys. You can run up walls. You can jack people up, like stuff like that. Not that you can't do that in Madden. Well, not the running off the walls part. But you have like, or like the NBA Street, you have like the game breakers where like you just like do all these special moves. It was like really cool. And obviously that's kind of what they tried to implement this year in Madden with the X Factors. It's a variation off of a game breaker, really. When you get a guy in the zone, he can just do different things than he could do at any other time of the game. Now, obviously, it's not like a guaranteed touchdown per se, but like when the game breakers hit, it was like a guaranteed score. If I remember correctly, obviously, I was a lot younger when these things came out. But at the same time, it was cool, and like I said, everybody loved them. Everybody enjoyed those games. So the fact that they are bringing something back, like I said, at the end of the day, Madden just needed some competition more than anything. And obviously, if we're not going to get an NCAA game yet because of the whole like rights and stuff, and maybe we can soon, hopefully, once like the guys can start profiting off their likeness again. Not again, but can officially start profiting off their likeness in like what I think it's like, not this upcoming season, but next year, like 2021, I believe. I know it's not that far off. But so if that happens, then maybe then we can get another EA game, the EA college football game back, which I mean, I would love because I love the college games, even more so than Madden back in the day. Though I never did. I'm so mad I didn't really know about Dynasty at that point, just because I wasn't a big Dynasty. I was like more of a career mode guy. So I love Road to Glory on the old NCAA game, so that's just mainly what I played. But the fact that I missed out on like like in EA, like in Madden, which is like the franchise mode, which is basically like the only mode I play now, more or less. I think I can be a good GM. Same thing I do in 2K too. I just do like my GM or like my team, because I think like I'm like being a GM shouldn't be that hard. Now obviously it's a video game, so not exactly the same. But I'm like, all right, there's I can clearly fix this team up better than these guys can. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, and I enjoy that. So like I said, I'm mad I missed the boat when the NCAA games were still available for purchase, that I didn't utilize it to the full extent that I could. But again, long story short, it's just cool that we're going to have more options. Because the idea of it just was kind of annoying that EA had that kind of like a monopoly on like sports games outside of like 2K, obviously for NBA. Like they had a monopoly on everything else, and it was like either you go to them or you get nothing. At least now 2K, and I mean that some people may not be happy about that because obviously not everybody loves NBA 2K. But again, it's kind of the same premise. You don't have to make a game as good, quote unquote, when you don't have any competition. Like NBA Live isn't really a thing to the extent that it's competing and such or better than 2K. So then they don't really have to get things that work as properly as they should or add in all the elements and features that people may want, because it's like, hey, look, you're going to buy the game regardless. But at least this, in my mind, this should not only cause Madden to be better, but this 2K game shouldn't just be some foolishness. It should be pretty decent just because it's the first game, and they're going to want to try to show people like, hey, look, we're coming back. We're not just coming back to play second fiddle. We want to be the big dog in terms of football gaming. Like I said, it's not going to come out to 2021, so we'll see what happens. But obviously, like I said, it's nice to see and to hear that there's at least going to be some competition in the football gaming universe, if you want to call it that. You just want some competition. That's all you want. You just want competition. You don't want people you don't want everybody you don't want to have to be forced to play one game, and it was like, even if it's bad, it's like, well, everybody just not going to play anything, which you might. But sometimes, sometimes taking time off. I think different people are making it. I don't remember if Insomniac made it back in the day, but the old like Spider-Man game that I had on like my PlayStation, I don't know if it was PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3, I don't remember. I think it was PlayStation 2. But now I got the Spider-Man game that came out last year for my PS4. One of the best games I've played in a long time. It was so enjoyable. I literally came home and played it every night after work. It was so great. So I finished everything. I got like the DLCs and like everything. I didn't even care. Now I wish the DLCs were a little bit better, but that's a different story. But yeah, the story mode, sensational. The fighting, great. The scenics, all different. The side missions outside of the stupid stealth missions with Mary Jane, great. So maybe sometimes taking time off is good. Maybe taking time off is good. Maybe it'll benefit 2K, and it will allow them to make a good game. Still, not that they weren't making good games before, but maybe they've had time away to see the ways in which Madden has succeeded and it has failed. And they can utilize that now into their own games, and hopefully it'll work out for the best. That's all. I'm just hopeful at this point because I have no reason not to be, and hopefully 2K doesn't give me a reason not to be hopeful because I just want more and better sports games. So, like I said, if you're a gamer out there, I know you are in tune with this. And if you're not, maybe you can become one soon. Just because obviously you have more options to play than just Madden, which I know not everybody's a big fan of, but at least you'll have other options. But that'll do it here today for me. I said that weird. That'll do it here for me today on the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you guys, as always, for listening. Even though, again, thought I'd be more healthy. I'm not that sick, but my voice still sounds weird. But yeah, so I want to thank you for listening to my weird voice as I talked about sports. If you haven't already, like I always remind you guys, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top when we drop our latest stuff. If you could, please give us a 5-star rating, write us a review. Very appreciated. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media so we can talk there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Anything you wanted to chat, want to discuss about, want to debate, you can tell me why Mark Jackson's the better option for the Nets. You can tell me why. You can tell me what you think is going to happen with all this coronavirus stuff, and especially within sports, because it's the likelihood of people playing games with no fans is becoming more and more true by the day, or more and more likely by the day, I should say. So, to talk about that, talk about the NFL CBA and how this is just all going wonky. I didn't get to touch on, we could talk about the Charles Barkley, Draymond back and forth. Maybe there'll be new stuff that I can talk to you guys about for the next episode. Hopefully, but Charles clapped back. He clapped back hard. Shout out to him. Bench players talking like starters. He hates it. But yeah, I called him a backup singer. Not a backup singer, just like a little known. He didn't want to disrespect Joe Fatone, but he basically called him Joe Fatone for men's sake, which was kind of funny on the Dan Patrick show. But yeah, so anytime you want to discuss, find us on social media. We are more than happy to discuss it with you as well. But that has been my time. I want to thank you guys again for listening to me talk about sports. And until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.